Welcome to Travel Moments from Fabintro. I'm Bill Russo and we are at Monument Park in Fort Lee, New Jersey. This park was dedicated in 1908. Let's take a look. General George Washington, 1732 to 1799. He was in Fort Lee many times during the Battle of New York. His main headquarters was in Hackensack, but had a temporary headquarters in Fort Lee, where we are now, near Anderson Avenue and Elizabeth Street. His main objective in Fort Lee was to observe and see that Fort Washington, across the Hudson River, was well prepared for the coming battle with the British forces. He also wanted to make sure that the British fleet did not sail up the Hudson River. It's on the other side of those buildings. By standing on the top of the palisades in Fort Lee, he had a good view of what was going on in the Battle of New York. General Washington was responsible for changing the name of the town from Fort Constitution to Fort Lee. Not the Fort Lee of the Civil War, but a general Fort Lee of the Revolutionary War on the side of the colonists. Now let's take a walk and look at this beautiful monument in this beautiful square in Fort Lee, New Jersey. There we go. Let's focus on that monument now. We are looking west, and beyond those buildings are cliffs and the Hudson River below it, Manhattan on the other side. To your left in this video is the George Washington Bridge, and to the right is the south along the Hudson River and the cliffs of New Jersey. Monument was put up in commemoration of the soldiers of the American Revolution of 1776 and erected by the state of New Jersey under the auspices of the Fort Lee Revolutionary Monument Association. We are now looking at the monument in Monument Park from a different angle. We are looking west. And I believe that may be General Washington himself, looking over the cliffs of New Jersey. This is a beautiful square. And this plaque reads, next to this mortar ball, it reads, explosive mortar ball of the type used aboard military sailing vessels pre-Civil War. Oh, there's a red lanternfly walking right by. Explosive mortar ball of the type used aboard military sailing vessels pre-Civil War period, recovered from the Palisades in Fort Lee. The Palisades are the cliffs to the east, during excavation in the 1890s, donated by the Abbott family, December 7, 1982. Let's read this plaque. 225 years ago, Patriot Thomas Paine wrote about his experience in Fort Lee in The Crisis. He spoke of summer soldiers and sunshine patriots. Those were the times that tried men's souls. At that, the darkest hour of our American Revolution, Paine, General Washington, and the troops of the American Army turned retreat into victory. The retreat road out of Fort Lee led to the establishment of America. The world was turned upside down by those brave patriots. We dedicate this monument to their cause, American liberty. Dedicated November 20, 2001, on the 225th anniversary of the Retreat to Victory. Retreat to Victory Committee consisted of Fort Lee Mayor and Council, Fort Lee Historic Committee, and the Fort Lee Historical Society. It's a great place to visit with plenty of shopping, restaurants, and great views if you take a walk this way in easterly direction to the cliffs of the Palisades here in Fort Lee, New Jersey, right next to the George Washington Bridge, appropriately named the George Washington Bridge. It has a great history, including the fact that General Pershing dedicated this park in 1908. General John Blackjack Pershing, 1860-1948, participated in the Spanish-American War, Mexican expedition, general of the armies of World War I, and he attended the dedication of this monument park as keynote speaker. Let's talk for a moment about General Nathaniel Greene. General Greene, who lived from 1742 to 1786, took command of Fort Lee on September 17, 1776, right here in this land, Fort Lee. The encampment was the main quartermaster post for supplying men and equipment to Fort Washington on the New York side, which is right over those buildings there, over the cliffs of the Palisade. During the Battle of New York, General Greene was a personal friend of George Washington and was one of the two generals to serve George Washington throughout the war. He became a hero fighting the British in the Carolinas. Here is a separate plaque dedicated to General Nathaniel Greene. You are looking at the grounds of Monument Park in Fort Lee, New Jersey, where you have a beautiful plaza, which we spoke about, and the Fort Lee Museum in the borough of Fort Lee in Bergen County, New Jersey. This was dedicated, the museum, in 1999. The park itself was created in 1908. Thomas Paine, 1737-1809, author and soldier, author of Common Sense and American Crisis, two great publications. Thomas Paine volunteered for the Continental Army. He marched to Amboy, New Jersey, located off the tip of Staten Island, where the British began the invasion of New York. He arrived before the first 9,300 Redcoats landed and stayed until the fighting went north. Paine then went to Fort Lee, where we are here, where General Nathanael Greene appointed him as one of his aides. While stationed in Fort Lee, he authored the American Crisis pamphlet, which contained the famous quote. Here it is: "These are the times that try men's souls." Let me repeat that without the background noise. Thomas Paine inspired the colonists with this quote: "These are the times that try men's souls." Ladies and gentlemen, Monument Park, Fort Lee, New Jersey. This has been a presentation for Fabintro Travel Moments. You might be wondering, who created this park? How did it come about? Well, here's your answer in a monument, which I will read to you. General U. Mercer from 1726-1771. He was the one. Fort Lee was constructed by General Mercer on October 18, 1776. The Fort Lee, not the Monument Park, but Fort Lee itself, was created on orders from General George Washington, who originally called it Fort Constitution. Fort Constitution was later renamed Fort Lee in honor of General Charles Lee, second in command of the Continental Army, by orders of George Washington, General George Washington. Monument Park was the campgrounds itself for the Continental Army. Unfortunately, General Mercer was killed at the Battle of Princeton on January 12, 1777. He made the ultimate sacrifice during the birth of the nation of the United States of America. And this is Bill Russo, once again, for Fabintro Travel. This is the Centennial Time Capsule, which was dated September 18th, 2004. And it reads, "To all future citizens of Fort Lee, may these items help you remember the rich history of Fort Lee and those past citizens that strive to make our community a better place to live. To be opened by the Fort Lee Bicentennial Committee, September 18, 2104. You can find out more about Monument Park in the description of this YouTube video.